Find the coordinates of the midpoint of a segment with the given endpoints. M, 11, negative 2, and N, negative 9, 13. Okay, I've already got the points graphed. If we're going to use coordinate grid for this, we can go back to our right triangle to figure this out. If I draw a right triangle following the grid lines, what I could do is calculate the horizontal and vertical distances and just cut those in half and see where that ends up on the line. So for N, this vertical distance right here, this leg that drops straight down from N, I can count how many spaces I have from 13 down to negative 2, and that's 15. And then for M, moving horizontally to the left, I go from 11 all the way back to negative 9, and that is a distance of 20. If you need to, you can zoom in and count those spaces. Now, if I take half of that distance on each of those legs, I should be able to triangulate my midpoint. So half of 15 is 7.5. Or 7.5, and half of 20 is 10. So starting at N, I'm going to move down 7.5 into the right 10, and that should put me right at my midpoint. And if I do that, down to 7.5 would put me at 5.5, and then over 10 will put me at 1. So right here is my midpoint at 1, 5.5. And that makes sense. That circle that I put there does seem to be halfway through N and M. Whenever you do these, when you're starting out, you should always graph them just to check to make sure your answer makes sense. You don't always necessarily need to use a graph. You can use the formula. And essentially what this formula is two algebra problems, or two expressions, one for the x and one for the y's, and you have to do them separately. But what you're doing here is you're just adding the two x coordinates together and then dividing by 2. What that is just taking an average. Midpoint and average is the same thing when we're talking about two numbers. So, first identify what my x sub 1 and x sub 2 are. That's the x coordinate from the first point and the x coordinate from the second point. So I'm going to average together 11 and negative 9. Now watch out, there's negative numbers here. So, and for my x's, 11 plus negative 9 divided by 2. And for my y's, I'm going to average negative 2 and 13. So for my y's, I'm going to do negative 2 plus 13 divided by 2. Now on top of the first fraction, 11 plus negative 9. These are opposites, 11 and negative 9. So I'm actually going to find the difference. Think of this, I always think in terms of money. If you have $11, this is where I'm starting, and I add to that a debt of $9, I actually only have $2. So 11 plus negative 9 is 2. Oops. Sorry, and then that should be a 2 on the bottom still. And for my y's, -2 plus 13. I start out $2 in the hole. I add $13. That gives me $11. So I have 11 divided by 2. Now simplify these fractions. 2 over 2 is 1. And 11 over 2 is 5.5. Now these are the same coordinates I used in the first part of this when we graphed it. And we got the same answer. We didn't have to go through the graphing process. And you want to get used to using this formula.